Hello and welcome to Bobbin Talk. In this video I will show you how to do this particular tote bag with the front pocket, the handles, and some rivets, grommets, some kind of hardware. If you're interested in accessory design, check out my accessory design book. It is a textbook that is widely used throughout the world in various fashion design colleges, and it follows the process of accessories from design to prototyping, sketching, illustration, and manufacturing. You can find a link to the book in the description below. Welcome to Bobbin Talk. The best way to create a bag is by drawing a sketch, preferably a flat sketch like this one, in advance, so you know what all of your design details are. And ideally, you would like to have all of your measurements done in advance, so you're not wondering what these measurements are. So let's go into rectangle. Make sure that you have the rectangle selected or shortcut S, and you can left click on the platform and it will give you a rectangle. Now my measurements again were 20. We can start with 20 by 12, and you can input here 20 for width and 12 for height. Click OK, and then we can edit the bottom piece a little bit more. Once we edit the measurements, then we'll duplicate it again. Let's go to edit pattern, and I'm going to select just one dot here, and I'm going to move it to the right. I'm holding the shift, and you can also right click at the same time to give a particular measurement. So the distance move, I want to give it 1 inch on one side. Again, our width is 20 on top, 18 on the bottom, so I'm going to take off 1 inch on one side and 1 inch on the other side. Come back here, select the other point, hold shift, start dragging so that you're working on the same exact line, and right click. That will give you this window, and you can input 1 inch up here, so it will move exactly 1 inch. Okay, we have our front pattern piece, and at this point I can also come select the pattern piece, right click, copy, paste the pattern piece, and we have the front and the back pattern piece. It is a really good practice to start naming your pattern pieces immediately. So I'm gonna select the annotation tool, click inside the pattern, and give the name that you would like this pattern to be. So I'm gonna give it front body, then go to the other one, and this one I will call back body. This way, if you have multiple various pieces, you know exactly what is what. If you need to edit the annotation, click on the smaller A. You can grab it, move it, edit, delete. Next, we can also work on the bottom piece and the handle. For the bottom piece, we just see that it's 2 inches from the bottom, and we can just create an internal line and cut, and I'll show you right now. If you want to have exactly the same editing on both pieces, you can make sure that you select both pieces and that they are symmetric pattern with sewing. So select symmetric pattern with sewing. Now we have a blue outline. That means that whatever you do on one piece will be duplicated on the other one, including the sewing. If you want to do a different design, we'll have to unlink them later. So right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to edit pattern. I'm going to right click on the bottom and offset as internal line. I want to create this particular sewing line here. So come back to CLO. I'm going to give it 2 inches here as distance, click OK. So that's our internal line. Then I'm going to right click on it, and I am going to choose cut and sew. So that not only cuts the pieces, but automatically it sews them together. Right now we're missing the bottom piece, but let's say our bag is about 3 or 4 inches wide. Again, I'll come back to the rectangular, make sure that you have the rectangle selected, shortcut S, left click on the board and give it 18 inches, as that was the width here, plus 4 inches of width. And keep in mind that we will have to decide later if we want a side panel or if we want to extend this. So we'll decide that in a bit. So first I would like to just round the corners a tiny bit. So I'm going to select the smooth curve tool and left click on the corner, start dragging and right click. And you can link these. So I'm going to give it 0.25, so it's exactly the same on both sides. Click OK, and that just rounds the corner a tiny bit. So I'm going to do the same here. 0.25. You can do a little even less, so you don't have that much of a curve there. I just want to make sure that it's not a sharp angle, so the sewing is done better and the corners will look a little bit better. So 0.25 on all of them. This is exactly the width of our front and back. So we need to decide if we want a side panel here, which will be this 4 inches width, or either extend both sides, the body, or make the bottom a bit smaller on both sides so this can wrap around. So again, if you want a side seam, then this needs to be extended to come around the corner. If you want to create a side panel, that's fine, then that will be the width of this. So let's say that I don't want to do a side panel, I just want to extend both sides to wrap around the side piece because I just want to have a side seam. I don't want to have any additional pattern pieces. So I am in the edit pattern tool. I'm going to select all of my points on this side. I can hold shift and start dragging, right click so you have exact measurement, and give 2 inches as the distance moved. And since these are linked with editing, you can see that it's doing them on both sides. And I'll do it. And we need to come to the other side of the patterns. Hold shift, start dragging, right click, and give it again 2 inches distance. That ensures that our pattern pieces will come and wrap around to this side. Next on our list is creating the handles. So we can double check with our sketches and see that the handles are 1.5 inches wide. They will take on 10 inches length here. Plus here we have a 9-inch drop. 9 and 9 would be 18. So that would be 10 and 18, 28. And give it another 3-4 inches here for the width. So let's say they're about 32 inches long. So let's go here again, grab the rectangle tool and left click, and let's give it 32 for width and 1.5 for the width of the handles. So the length and the width, and we need 2 of these. Copy and then paste the same exact pattern piece, and we have our 2 handles. So let's go check out the 3D window and see how the pieces are arranged right now. I'm going to grab them all, make sure that you select them all. I actually want to rotate the pieces. I can see that when I'm clicking on this one, it's selecting the one on the right. I just want to make sure that I have them all facing the same exact way. So I'm gonna just rotate all of the pattern pieces, and this way they will be exactly on the same plane. So I'm clicking on the right one and it's selecting here the right one. Click on the left one and I'll double check with the handles, make sure that everything is exactly the same way. Now in this version of CLO3D we already have 3D avatars, so we could try and work with one of those. So go to the library, select avatar and go to 3D shape. So we can try and work with one of these shapes, for example. So let's do this one, open it in the 3D window. And we can also work on the size by clicking on the little icon here, which will allow us to change the size. So I want something that will be closer to our measurement that we have in the bag, and maybe a little bit taller. And when you finish, just click back here and you can bring it up here and check and see if it's pretty much the same size. If not, you can edit it a little bit more. So I want it to be the length of the bottom. This seems to be a bit too long, so I'm gonna bring it to this. Okay, now I can start arranging my pieces and see if we can work with the arrangement points, and we can bring those or activate those by coming here and click on show arrangement points, and you can see that you have arrangement points around the body. Unfortunately, we only have handle positions that we don't necessarily have. So if you have a long strap that goes around, you can use these. And for these here, it looks like these handles are actually coming this way, which will not work for me. But I can work with this in terms of arranging front, back, bottom, and then work with the rest of them separately without the arrangement points. So I want to make sure that I'm looking at both windows just to see what I'm calling front is really my front. So I'm gonna come to this piece and bring it here, and you can see that it's wrapping it around already. I'm gonna adjust it a bit more, and then so you need to click on a blue point to have that arrangement. And you can also bring it around the shape a bit more. Again, we can make this shape a little bit wider if you feel like it's not giving you enough width. So that might be a bit better. And I'm just going to move it slightly this way. Now next would be this piece. And this one, I don't see any arrangement points on this side. That's really strange actually. I'm gonna deactivate them and activate them again. And it's possible that because I changed the width of it, so now I don't have the arrangement points on this side. Well, that's really annoying actually. So I'm gonna work without the arrangement points there. So I'm just gonna grab the bottom and place that on the bottom. And also I will have to make sure that it didn't orient the wrong way. I don't necessarily want this to be curved, so that might become a problem later, but we'll see. And the last one that I'm gonna bring is this one. I'm gonna bring it to the back, make sure that it's outside, and I'm gonna rotate it. And then later make sure that it is correct. So one more thing that I want to check is, so when you're clicking here, take a look in the 2D window and make sure that things are oriented the way you think they are. If not, you might have to rotate things. So clicking here, so ideally this point should be on this side. So I'll click here, correct, it is on this side. And again on 2D, on the 3D window, I'll click here. Make sure that you're clicking actually on the pattern piece. So that's my front right here, and then that's on this side. So I know that when I'm stitching, I can stitch these together. So I'm actually going to stitching just so I can start putting together this. I'm going to click N for segment sewing, and I'm going to click these. I already know that they're together. And then this was cut and sew, it's automatically sewn, so I'm going to do the bottom. And you can also sew in the 3D window if you want to make sure that things are actually matching. This one got flipped, so make sure it isn't flipped. You can also, if a stitching is flipped, come to the edit sewing tool, right click on it and reverse sewing, and that will fix the sewing. So also the bottom segment here should match with this one, and this is our body. So technically we could arrange and sew this already, but I just want to make sure that these bottom pieces are actually correctly placed. So I will, this is this piece, and I want to make sure that this piece comes correctly here. And also this I'll have to rotate and bring it here. And one more time I'm going to click on the bottom here and also here and make sure that these are oriented correctly. And on the other side I want to make sure that I'm working on this particular pattern piece. So I'm putting a dot here, I can see it here, and now I want this part of the pattern to be oriented the right way. So I'm clicking towards the right side, I can see it there, clicking towards the right side, I can see it there. So these look good. I just need to bring it more towards the outside and closer to where it's supposed to be, and just orient it a little bit more. So this one you can also rotate a bit and just make sure that things are better aligned. Now I would like to at this point simulate just the body, but in order for my handles not to move, I'm going to select both of these pattern pieces. Make sure that you select both, and I'm going to click on them and I'm going to freeze them. Now for the rest of the pattern pieces, I am going to strengthen them. That will allow me to have better simulation. So select them all here in the 2D window, right click in the 3D window, strengthen, and now we got to make sure that also the bottom is stitched onto the pattern pieces, and that we can do in the 2D window. So I'm just going to select here. I don't need the arrangement points anymore. Okay, so this will come here, and the M sewing tool might be a good idea here. And since I extended this, I would need a middle point here in the 2D window. So let's come to add point split line, and we can place a point, and you can see you can try to aim where exactly is the middle, or you can just right click here and select uniform split, and that will split the line down and give you exactly that middle point. Let's do the same on the other side. So I'm grabbing the add point split line. I'm going to hover over the line, and you can either try to aim and find the middle, or you can just right click and select uniform split, and it will place the point right in the middle. And we are ready to sew the bottom piece. So we want to make sure that we have the 2D and the 3D window open at the same time, just to double check we're sewing everything correctly. So if I click here, I want to make sure that this corresponds to the piece that we're going to sew at the bottom. So I know that starting here left to right, I'll also start here left to right. I'm going to sew with free sewing. I'm going to click on M, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here just so I can see better. Starting from left to right, and then on the bottom piece left to right. I also want to double check the other side and make sure that that is also sewn correctly. So let's take a look and see what we have here, and that automatically is stitched on the other side. So let's go and see if we can simulate this and if this looks good. All of our pattern pieces are strengthened, that's why they look orange. So I'm just going to click the spacebar or simulate and watch this bag simulate. In the meantime, we can unfreeze these pattern pieces. We're going to leave the bag as it is right now. And we also need to create stitch lines wherever the handles need to go. In the meantime, I also want to annotate my bottom piece. So I'm going to come to A, right bottom here, so that my pattern piece is done correctly. If you learned something new, please like this video. And my pattern piece is now named, and I also have it oriented the right way, so I know that if things get moved around, I know which way to bring them on. So next we need to create the stitch lines for our handles, and we can create this in a couple of easy ways with the internal lines. So let's take a look at our sketch, and we can see that they come down to the bottom piece. Our stitch line goes from the edge of the bottom piece all the way up to this stitch line, and there should be a measurement here. You decide what this wants to be. Let's say it's about 2 inches or so. Could be a little bit smaller, as this is 2 inches. This is more like maybe inch and a quarter. So we need to create this internal line so we can place top stitching there. Let's go to our CLO. We can do this in a couple of different ways. We can offset the lines, or we can just create an internal rectangle that fits perfectly in there, and you can left click and create the desired length. So let's say it's 2 inches. In terms of the width, and the height would be 1.5. Let's say we want to give about 1/4 of an inch distance inside, so I'll give it a 1 inch and see what that looks like. I'm going to click OK, and this is our line. We just need to place it inside, and that will be the guide for our top stitching. We need to now duplicate this on both sides. Now if these were linked with editing, it would have applied it to both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this one and then just copy it again. So I'm going to duplicate this one and place it on the other side. I want to zoom in a little bit more to make sure that it is centered perfectly. Place it, and I'm going to clone pattern with linked editing. And I'm just going to place it here, so that's my other handle. And now I also need these internal shapes inside of the body of the bag so they can become our guide for the stitch lines. So I'm going to select this shape, copy, and I'm going to paste it inside of the body. I'm going to rotate it and choose the placement that you want. And if you want the stitching to go all the way up to the top, that's great. But if we take a look at the sketch again, our stitch line goes only up to here. So currently I have it all the way up and around. So I'm going to lower this a little bit, and I'm going to have to manually do this. Grab this, left click, start dragging, right click, and decide on the dimension that you want. So I want this to go down to 9 inches, so I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to also duplicate that and place it. So I want to change the length of this one here too, so I'm going to grab it, hold shift, start dragging, and you can see that it's changing on both sides. Right click, select 9 inches here, and I'll do the same on the other side. Select the shape, hold shift, start dragging, right click, and select 9 inches, and that should be done on both sides. Click OK, and we're done with this. Now we need to decide exactly what the placement is here. If you want an exact measurement, you can also work with the add point split line and measure exactly where you would like them to be. You want this to be about 8 inches in, so I'm going to right click and the yellow line here, so take a look at the measurements. The yellow line here, I want it to be 8 inches, so I'm going to click OK, and that's going to become the guide for where I want this. I'll do the same on this side. I'm going to select 8 inches for the yellow line, which is right there, and that tells me where I need to place my shape. So I'm going to grab the shape and just make sure that it is aligned with my point here. And also this shape, you can barely see, the point is right there, and you can see it now better. I could just move a tiny bit. And now my stitch lines are aligned. They are exactly where I want them to be, and obviously you can change and move that however you like. We're ready to stitch the handles. We have internal line for the stitching here and internal line here. I don't want to stitch all around on the bottom too. I just want to do the top part. So I will use the M sewing tool. It's a good idea again to have both windows open to make sure that you have the correct pattern pieces in front of the correct side. And I'm gonna select both of these. I'm gonna unfreeze them so that I can move them around. I am not simulating yet. I want to stitch them first. I just want to make sure that they're arranged properly. So right now this piece will go for this one, so it will be on this side, and this piece will work for this piece, so that won't be here in front. I also want to make sure that I'm doing left and right side correctly, otherwise they will twist. So one more thing I'm going to check is I'm going to click on the left side. I'm going to zoom in here, and I want to place a dot here and make sure that that corresponds to this. So again, this side, take a look at the blue dot. I want this to go here, and that is where it will get stitched. So now I can comfortably go back to my 2D window and sew these lines. I'm going to select M sewing tool, and I'm going to go all around this line, and then come and stitch all around this line. And here, and here, and again this could get twisted, so we'll have to double check in the 3D window. So this should be done on both sides, and let's go take a look in the 3D window. Now at this point I do want to strengthen the handles. That will give me a better simulation. So I'm going to select the pattern pieces of the handles in the 2D window, right click on them here and strengthen, and I'm going to click simulate and hope for the best. Excellent. So we have our handle on the bag. something got a bit odd here, but here it looks good. So I'm gonna grab this handle right now, I'm gonna pull it up, and I'm gonna put a pin right there just for now. I'm gonna hold the W and place a pin. I want to see what is happening on that side, and I'm gonna grab this handle, pull it up. It looks good. It was just simulating. So hold it up there, click W and place a pin there too. And now my bag is simulated for now, and it is all strengthened. If you want to see what it looks like softer, you can select all of the pattern pieces and unstrengthen. So the last thing that we have to do here is create this pocket. So let's go back to CLO, and we can do that in the 2D window. Let's grab our pattern piece. We know that this is our front. I'm going to come to internal lines and select internal rectangle, and I am going to create my pocket. Select the height that you want. You can double check with the sketch, see how low this is. I know that it's 10 inches tall, so I'm just going to create a rectangle here. I'll put 6 inches for now, and the height I know that is 10 inches, and we can come and edit and change that. Right click. So 10 inches seems a bit too high. I'm going to work with 6 inches height. I'm going to fit it in here to make sure that it fits in this space, and I can also grab this and make sure that it's right on the line or even slightly inside. Once you're happy with the shape, you can right click on this shape and clone as pattern, and now we have the actual pattern piece. I'll place it to the left side, and now I'm ready to stitch the pocket. So I'm gonna go around this way and also this way. We don't want to close the top, as this is a pocket, and we want to make sure that it is open on top. Go to the 3D window. I'm gonna right click on that piece and I'm gonna superimpose over, just make it easier for the simulation, and I'm gonna click simulate. And this piece is lighter because it is not strengthened. Everything else is orange because it is still strengthened. So we have our bag for now with our outside pocket. Couple of last things I would like to do here is I want to play with the top stitching. So let's go to the 2D window. So for our top stitch lines, the handles are on top of the bag, so we'll work with this. Let's go to our top stitching line, and we have a default top stitch here. If it doesn't appear, just click on the top stitching. I'm going to click on the lines where I want top stitching. So I'm going to select this one, and this one. So we have a default top stitch. I want to change that. I am not a big fan of the actual default top stitch. Make sure that that is selected. And we have all of our settings here. So for leather, I like to have a lot less stitches per inch. Let's say about 4 or 5 would look really good. And we can open up both the 2D and 3D windows so you can start seeing what is here. If you lose the property editor object browser, you can come down here and click on the reset layout, and that will open all the windows. So we have stitches per inch 5. Thread thickness, I would like to have this a bit thicker, so I'm gonna select like 80, and you can see already that this is becoming more prominent. In the beginning here, I would like this to be object. Will give it a nice raised texture. Some computers you might not be able to see objects, so you might have to select texture. Make sure that this is on texture if you cannot see your top stitching. Offset is right now 1/16 of an inch, so that looks really good. It's very close here, but I like what it looks like. If you want this to be 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, you can see how it gets further and further away. Either one is fine. So I'm going to leave this at 1/8. And next thing I would like to do is here you can select the material. Do you want it to be more like shiny, silky? Let's try shiny. And color, so I'm going to select a bright color right now so we can see it well. And at this point I'm also going to select all of my pattern pieces, and I'm going to come here and unstrengthen them. So we can see right now we have a white bag with top stitching everywhere the same. We can obviously change the different kinds of top stitching. You can also come to the library and work with various top stitches that are available here. So you can come to hardware and trims, you can select top stitch, and you can drag and drop any kind of top stitching that you like. So single thread, chain stitch is one of my favorites. I'm gonna drag and drop that here, or you can just left double click, it will appear on the other side. So you can also have something that is more interesting. Let's say this looks really good, so I'm gonna left double click and it will appear in my library. So let's apply that to at least one area. So I'm gonna select this particular line and I'm gonna offset from the edge. So this is the line, I'm gonna apply this top stitching and I'm gonna make sure that it is offset and that it is a color, and you can see it already appearing there. And we can also offset so it's lower. Offset is 1/16. I'm gonna make that 1/8 and maybe even lower. I'm gonna make this 3/8, and that pushed it lower below that stitch line. So we do want to make sure that this is removed from here. So in order to remove the stitching, I will need to unlink the editing from these two pattern pieces. So I'm going to select both pattern pieces, right click on them and remove linked editing. Otherwise it's going to keep adding whatever I do in one piece, adding the same exact piece on the other side. So at this point I can come in and I can remove a particular line, and that should get rid of the top stitching on the back, so we don't have this on the back anymore. Here we have a little bit of a problem with the pattern. It is pushed inside, so I'm just going to grab this particular pattern piece and simulate again. And that should resolve most of that, and you can do that a couple of times. You can see that this is softening up because it's not strengthened. So I'm going to stop the simulation for right now. Next thing I want to do for my bag is select some materials. So I'm going to go to library, fabric, and look for, so I'm just going to choose full grain leather, double click on it, open up my object browser, make sure that it's there, and select the pattern pieces that I want to apply that to. If you want different textile or suede or some kind of webbing, then you can bring that in for the handle. So I'm going to apply this to all of my pattern pieces, and then I can simulate one more time to see how it affects, and it became more supple, more full body. And I don't want it white, I would like to apply some kind of color. So make sure that you select that, come to color, and choose whatever color you like, whatever is appropriate for your particular bag. And next thing, so I'm gonna come to my top stitching, select, I left this as default top stitching. I would like to make sure that give it a name that I know what it is. So I'm going to name this one overall. And I will come down here and I will give it some kind of a color. So right now it is a bright pink color. I'm going to choose a blue color and make sure that is a color that I can actually see. And I can't see the color right now, so I'm going to come here to the type and I'm going to switch that to texture. That should make it visible. So object will be visible in render, but for now the top stitch as texture will appear in your 3D window better. Now I'm not happy with the color of the fabric actually, it feels a little dull, so I'm just gonna come and change my color a bit and switch that to a brighter color, so you can see better the difference between the top stitch and the leather itself. So this is our handbag for now. Another thing that we can add here is maybe some kind of studs or hardware or some kind of a trim. So let's go to the library and go into hardware and trims, some kind of a trim. So under buttons and buttonhole, there should be a variety of buttons that are not buttons for buttoning a garment, but they look more like snaps, eyelets. We have a variety of trim here. So I will choose a snap rivet, and I'm going to left double click to have it appear here. So right here, I'm going to work with the button tool. I'm going to come directly and place the button wherever I like it to. So here looks good to me. And the button, you can come to property editor and you can change the color, for example. So let's make that blue too, and you can see what it looks like. See if you're happy. I'm going to leave it blue so you can see the contrast. And I'm also going to come and change the materiality. Instead of fabric, I'm going to choose metal, and that's going to give it a little bit of shine. So make sure that that is positioned and it is not up and away, but it is actually placed wherever you want it to be. And let's apply that everywhere where you would like it. So let's see, you want another one here. And obviously you can choose different kinds of trims, different kinds of buttons, studs, whatever you like. So let's see one more, maybe a snap rivet. I'm going to left double click on that, and I'll place a couple of those on the other side just for variety, and you can see what they look like. So I'm going to have that. Make sure you have the button tool and just place it wherever you like. One here and one here, and select this and give it a different color again. I'm going to also make this a plastic, and I'm going to give it a different color. I'm going to make this a bright red color, so that creates a bit of interest, and you can do that however you like. If you want to add sequins, then you can follow my other video of how to add sequins and top stitching. Like this video if you learned something new. And from here on, you can also add texture. You can add different design details. And I'll show you one more trick here that we can do. I'm going to remove this particular avatar, and I'll show you how you can create a bit of a display by using the cylinder avatar. Go to Avatar 3D Shape and choose this particular 3D shape. It is really large right now, so let's make it more of a smaller, thinner, more of a cylinder that we can hang in the middle of the air, and we can display or hang our bag on it. So I'm just going to make it a bit longer. I'm going to push it through a little bit. When you're done, just grab it, bring it up. So this might be a little too long here. I did not have good visibility for it, so that became really long. So something like that would be good. And we can place the bag handles inside. And let's click simulate. So one more thing we need to do is we would actually need to remove the pins. So I'm gonna click on the pins and delete all pins, and I'm gonna simulate and bring the handle more inside. And again, once you're happy with the placement, you can place pins, or you can just leave it hanging here as a display, and you can change the color of the three-dimensional avatar and choose something that is more appropriate for your particular design. And that is our tote in very bright color, hanging on a 3D avatar. We have a variety of top stitching here, and we have a front pocket, and obviously this particular material is pretty stiff, so the bag is staying open, but you can choose whatever you like. If you learned something new, if you like this video, please show that by pressing the like button and subscribe for this channel for a lot more videos. If you like what you saw in this video, if you learned something, please like the video. Feel free to leave any comments. I'm happy to answer your questions. And please subscribe to Bobbin Talk so you don't miss any of the new videos coming up. Thank you so much for watching.